Ahoy, mateys! Today, Rahdo runs through his top 10 pirate games because it's almost that time of year again. September 19th is International Talk Like a Pirate Day. And the tricky thing is, this year, ITLAP Day starts on, or it falls on a Monday. And of course, not everybody can spend all day playing pirate games on a Monday because they got to go to work. So Tim Bresnan of Dad vs. Daughter Games, he does a YouTube board game review channel like I do. It's a really great show. You can check out the links in the show notes or hit the I in the top right corner of the screen. He has declared September 17th, 2016 to be International Play Like a Pirate. And so I wanted to get the word out. I mean, that's going to be the day you want to don your finest pirate outfit, as I have clearly done here today, and take to the high seas and go for all the plunder and glory you can. So, in honor of that, I'm going to be doing a quick top 10 countdown of Jen's and my favorite pirate games, which is an interesting list for me to do because, unfortunately, the vast majority of pirate-themed games out there are really, well, not surprisingly, kind of cutthroat. Pirates, cutthroats, and all that. They're all about players screwing each other over and stabbing each other in the back, and that's not something Jen and I like. But fortunately, there are several piracy-themed games out there that aren't really quite so in your face and take that laden. And while not all of them are great for me and Jen, for reasons I'll talk about as I start going through them, I mean, they're all very, very good games, and they might provide an interesting alternative on International Play Like a Pirate Day, which is coming soon. So let's just jump right into it, starting with my number 10, Rum and Pirates. Now, the interesting thing about this one is it is from designer Stefan Feld, my favorite designer of all time. And he's made a pirate game. Now, this is one of his earlier designs. It's a fairly light, very family-friendly game. Not really kind of the thing he's known for these days, these big, heavy, elaborate, complex Euros. It's still a Euro, but it's kind of lightweight and kind of family fun. Basically, the notion is there's a whole bunch of pirates, traipsing around Tortuga. I assume it's Tortuga. Trying to collect treasure, get grog, and just look for a place to sleep for the night. And so all these pirates are just traveling around from location to location. The interesting thing is, if you were to imagine, the computer game Snake, where or the Tron Light Cycles, where players are kind of just going along and leaving a line of stuff behind them, and they have to be careful not to crash into their own or each other's lines. That's what this game kind of is. Because as you move on these series of paths all over the pirate town, you're leaving behind a wake of your crew. You're always moving forward, but your crew is falling farther behind, and that creates a line of pirates. And as more and more players are moving around this board, they're creating these strings of pirates everywhere that create walls that kind of pen people in. It's a really clever game. And then there's also a fair thing about who's going to pass first, so that they can get dibs on the best bunk space at the ship at the end of the day. There's a lot of clever stuff. There's a surprising amount of dice rolling. Like I said, this is an earlier Stefan Feld game. I mean, there's a lot of dice rolling in this game for a Stefan Feld game. But it's really, really clever. And Jen, I thought it was very sweet and charming and great for families. Now, really, the only downside to it is it's not at its best with two players. You really want to have 3 or 4 players to take up more space, so there are more lines of pirates filling up the board, so things get a little tighter and more tense. But that aside, it's a neat little game. It's got cute little pirate minis. It's got a nice looking board. It's maybe something that a lot of people haven't even heard of. It's kind of off at people's radar. But Rum and Pirates, my number 10. Now, moving on to number 9 is going to be Sewer Pirates. It's not pirates, but pirates, P-I-R-A-T-S. I've done a run-through. This is one of my older run-throughs. It's a very, very interesting game because in this game, the pirates are all anthropomorphized animals. Rats and cockroaches and was there spider eyes? It's been a while since I played it. It's interesting. And while it may sound gross, they're actually cute and adorable. You get these wonderfully expressive, neat little minis that are just... They may sound gross, like having a cockroach or a rat or what have you, but they are adorable. Absolutely cute. And what's happening is, all these anthropomorphized animals are pirating piloting their pirate ships through the sewers, and their ill-gotten gains are, bits of food and junk that they find in the sewers. Again, this sounds kind of gross, but you can check out my run through to see more. It's just so sweet and charming. I could imagine an entire animated feature film set in this universe. And the gameplay itself is players are on these boats and they are basically playing a game of leapfrog, trying to jump ahead of each other so that they can be at the front of the boat as it moves forward, so they can grab all the stuff floating in the water. But each different type of animal has different powers about how they can leap forward and create walls for other people. It's a really, again, a neat, clever game, great for families. And about my only complaint for it is, ideally, you want to have more than two. It works well as a two-player game, but if you had more than two, you're going to have a lot more interesting circumstances where players are all trying to jockey for position to get to that sweet spot so they can grab all the loot in this neat little set collection game. So that's my number 9. Sewer Pirates. Now, moving on to number 8, we have Francis Drake, which is a game of, or I guess it's more a game of privateers, and it's a very, very cool game. Very rich. This is not a family-friendly game. This is definitely for gamers, and the game is in 2 halves. First, there's the outfitting phase, which happens basically where players are trying to recruit crew and get supplies for their ships and whatnot, and they're in a race to do it. They want to grab as much stuff as they can off this town section of the board. But as they move forward through town and to grab the best stuff, they have to leave other things behind. They can only move forward in town. They can't go backwards. So there's a lot of tension of, I really want to get that thing that's 3 spaces ahead, but that means I'm going to skip 3 spaces and leave all that stuff for my opponents to pick up. It's basically a time track, and it works really, really nicely. But then the second half of the game is, after all the pirates are ready to set sail, they go to the Caribbean, and there's ports all over the place, and they deploy their ships in secret. They don't actually immediately reveal how much power they're bringing to bear at all the different ports. And once everybody's distributed how they're, where they're going to attack and where they're going to go, you reveal and find out who did the most. So it's almost kind of like this blind bidding thing. It's a really clever game, really solid. Once again, unfortunately, it's not the best with 2. It works okay. Actually, originally the game was a 3-player minimum game, but then there was a 2-player variant that was developed by a fan, and Peter Hawes, the designer, loved that variant so much he made it an official variant. That's what I demoed in my run-through. You can go check out, see more. And it works well as a 2-player game, and if you're looking for a heavier, very, very thematic, very grounded pirate game, this is one that's worthwhile checking out. But especially if you have more than 2 players. It's okay as a 2-player game, but I have actually gotten to play it as a 4-player game, and wow, there's a lot going on. A lot of tension in the first half, a lot of tension in the second half, a lot of excitement. Very, very cool. Number 8, Francis Drake. Then moving on to number 7, Grog Island. This is a really, this is kind of getting back to the Rum Pirates thing. This isn't about life on the high seas. In this game, players are pirates who have retired, who are trying to lead an easy life, back on some island, and they are trying to still make a living. They've retired from life on the high seas. They're trying to make a living running shops to sell peg legs and things to other pirates who come, and players are competing to have the best positions for their shops on the streets in the different towns. It's a really clever game, and the crux of what drives it is this very, very, very smart auction system. One of the most clever auction games I've ever seen, in fact. And again, Jen and I loved it a lot, but like all the ones at the higher end of this list, ideally it wants to have more than 2. It's a very interesting auction game. It works okay as a 2-player game, but once you've got 3 or 4 players, the auction for bidding for position to get the best spots in town to set up your pirate shops, it's phenomenal. It's an absolutely delightful game. I highly recommend it for higher player counts. Number 7, Grog Island. And again, you can check out my run through for that. Now moving on to number 6, we have Pathfinder, the adventure card game, Skull and Shackles. Now, full disclosure, I've never actually played this. I have played Pathfinder, the adventure card game, Rise of the Rune Lords, and I did a run-through for that. But the interesting thing is, Paizo, the publisher and the design team behind Rise of the Rune Lords, after they finished that whole suite of games, there was the base game, then there were a bunch of expansions, the next thing they released was Pathfinder adventure card game, Skull and Shackles, which takes the same basic cooperative, dice chucking, enemy fighting, treasure collecting, game that features the coolest thing about these Pathfinder games is they have a big epic campaign that you can play over weeks, and you can keep buying expansions to give new adventures for your characters as they get more and more powerful and discover more and more stuff. And the interesting thing, Skull and Shackles is entirely pirate themed. It's a high fantasy world with dragons and goblins and stuff like that, but the players are pirates. Like dwarven pirates and elf pirates and all that stuff. So like I said, Rise of the Rune Lords had its light but solid, fun, cooperative gameplay that Jen and I definitely enjoyed. And now it's available with pirates. So this is definitely one, if you're looking for a really solid, fun, fantasy pirate cooperative game, you might want to check out Pathfinder Skull and Shackles. Now, moving on to number 5, we have Port Royale. Now, this is a little tiny push your luck card game from designer Alex Pfister, who has been on a roll for the last couple of years. He's actually racked up quite an impressive number of Spiel des Jahres wins for like Broom Service, and he got nominated for Mombasa and stuff like that. He is a very, very hot designer, and this is a smaller game that was originally released as a little limited run game called Handler de Caribbean, Merchants of the Caribbean, but it got republished as Port Royale. And in this game, players are basically, again, hanging out at the port, not spending so much time at sea, hanging out at the port, and every round there are new opportunities that show up. Ships come into port, new pirates appear who you can hire, you can pay to join your crew, and what you're trying to do is build the best crew you can, avoid the ships that come into port and maybe attack and steal from you, and build up this crew so that you can go on expeditions and score lots of loot and victory points. The trick is, when it's your turn, you're drawing card after card after card, and you're building basically a row of cards that determines what you can recruit from. And the longer you go just drawing card after card after card, the more options you have, but the more chances there are that enough pirate ships will show up that will make you bust. This is basically a push your luck game where if you draw too many cards, you bust. But the more cards you draw before you pass, the more options you have to actually recruit stuff. So you want to push as hard as you can, but you don't want to push your luck too much because then you lose everything. And the interesting thing is after you pass, and then you can hire, can recruit people and heck, even claim pirate ships of your own to get money so you can recruit more people. Everybody else around the table gets the leftovers. After I've taken the cards I want, you as a player, you could actually grab some of those or grab one of those cards as well, but you have to pay me for the privilege. So it's a very, very neat little push your luck game with a fair amount of interactivity between players. A really neat little game, Port Royale. And the interesting thing is I played the base game. It's nice. They've actually released an expansion that adds a solo or cooperative version of the game. I haven't played that yet, but I'm very, very excited to give it a try. That might be something I'm actually doing on International Play Like a Pirate Day, trying to play Port Royale with the co-op expansion. But anyway, you can check it out. Neat. Of all the games I've mentioned, this is the smallest, it's the tightest, it's a little portable game. Very, very neat, Port Royale. Now, on to number 4, Dead Men Tell No Tales. This is another one I've done a run through for, so you can check that out. This is another cooperative game where players are working together. And I gotta say, I really, really do appreciate that. Again, like I said right up front, I don't want to be stabbing you in the back. I want to be working with you to, get as much spoils and plunder as possible. Now, in this game, our pirate crew has successfully attacked a merchant vessel, and it's stopped, and so now we are sending over a boarding party to get as much loot off the ship as possible. Now, under our onslaught of attacks, the ship has caught fire. It's going to sink before too long, so we're in a bit of a time panic, running around this sinking ship as the fire spreads. We can try and fight back the fire if we want to, but we're trying to get as much as we can. Here's the problem: we didn't know when we boarded that ship. It's a ship of the dead. It's full of pirate skeletons and whatnot who are running around. They're not bothered by the fire, and they're trying to stop us. So not only are we fighting the flames as they spread, and we're fighting undead skeleton zombies, but we're also fighting the clock because we only have so much time to get in, get the treasure, and get off before it sinks. It's a very, very clever, very solid, very fast playing cooperative game. It kind of has the same vibe, the same sort of structure as a Pandemic, but very atmospheric and really, really awesome little wooden bits representing the pirates and representing the skeletons and all that. Really neat game. It's my number 4. You can check out my run through for it, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Now, on to number 3. This game is only just now coming out. Hopefully, it'll be available to everybody by International Play Like a Pirate Day. September 17th, I mentioned that right up front. I did a run through last year when it was on Kickstarter, maybe it was earlier this year, and Jen and I really had a blast. We really enjoyed it. What's my number 3? Islebound, from designer artist Ryan Lockett. Now, like Francis Drake, this one is kind of pirate/privateer, which really is close enough. It definitely has the pirate feel. We are, sailing through a series of archipelagos that are randomly put together every time we play. Attacking port towns or engaging in negotiation, one way or the other. We're moving into these port towns and trying to take control, because once I own a port town, if you want to go to that port town, you got to pay me to get in. And we're recruiting more pirates. We're actually recruiting sea monsters to help us in our fights. There are little scenario adventures that pop up, and we're actually spending a lot of time doing pick up and deliver as well, going from one port, picking up supplies, and then taking them to another port to score points, while actually building up our own network of ports that we control, and also building buildings back in our own home port so we can score lots of points and win the game. There's a lot going on. It's absolutely gorgeous, and the thing I can say most about this game as high praise is, Jen and I, we tend not to really like pick up and deliver games, and there's a lot of pick up and deliver in this game, but we really enjoyed this. It's incredibly fast playing, very clever, very atmospheric, a wonderful number 3 pirate game, Islebound. Now, moving on to number 2. This is one I just did a run through for actually a few weeks ago with Jen. So if you want to check out that run through, you can see me and Jen working together, or competitively as pirates. Number 2 is Piratoons. Now, this is a real-time auction game where each player is trying to build the best pirate ship possible. And there's all kind, you're trying to expand your hull and get cannons and get living quarters and build up your mast and put sails and get pirates to man the deck. And the thing is, every round of auctions, there are a bunch of different elements that go into our pirate ships that are kind of collected randomly, and we don't know what they're going to be. And then they're all put in this really neat board that looks like a pirate chest, a treasure chest. And then what happens is we open up the chest, we see what's inside there, and then players in real time take their little meeples and start putting them on the things they want. We're basically doing an auction. Every meeple is bidding to try and get these pieces. And if I put a piece on there, but you want it, you better put 2 pieces on. And like, oh no, you put 2 pieces on, and then I'll put another piece on. And you only have a limited number of meeples and a limited amount of time to grab all the stuff you want. And so under this time pressure, you have to be very, very smart about noticing, right, what are the pieces I need? What are the pieces my opponent needs? So I need to bid them up, but I also need to grab what I need to grab. And it's very, very cool, very fun, very clever, and engaging. But again, not terribly mean. The meanest thing you can do in this game is just raise a bid so that your opponent has to pay a little bit more, but that's just standard auction stuff. It works really nice. It's a blast. Jen and I absolutely adore it, and it's an auction game that works very well with 2. All of these, Pathfinder, Skull and Shackles, Port Royale, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Islebound, and now my number 2, Piratoons. These are all great 2-player games. But now, let's save the best for last. My number 1, Rattle, Battle, Grab the Loot, which is an awesomely fun dice chucking game where every round we each have our own little pirate fleet that's represented by dice. These specialized dice that have numbers on them, but also special icons like cannonballs and ships on them and whatnot. And every round we're going to set sail, and there are going to be merchant ships and naval ships and whatnot that we're going to try to attack. Those are also represented by dice. I take my bunch of dice, and your bunch of dice represents your fleet. All the dice we're actually trying to plunder, the NPSs, the non-player ships. All these dice, put them in your fist, rattle them up, and then you drop them, and they scatter all over the place, but you drop them into your box lid. So they scatter all over the place, and then that represents the tactical space where all of my ships are, where all of your ships are, and where all the target ships are that we're trying to loot. Scatter all over the place. Depending on what they roll, that represents their total strength and their ability to plunder or their ability to defend themselves. And then we take turns trying to grab all the ships and get as much treasure as possible. It's an absolutely delightful game. Jen and I enjoy it a lot. Now, I know some people complain that maybe it's very luck dependent, and there's no getting around that. It is a very, very luck driven game. But it doesn't really matter for us because it is so fun and so breezy. Players don't directly attack each other. They're just in a race to get as much of this sweet, sweet booty, all these other cards as possible. And then after we're done with that, we go back to port, and all the spoils we've got allows us to buy lots of cool upgrades for our ships that make us more powerful so that we can do even better the next time we attack and move our little dice around and try to, beat our opponents to get as much treasure as possible. It works so nicely. Some people complain, like I said, it's too random. Jen and I, we don't think it's, yes, it's random, but it revels in that randomness. You just need to embrace the randomness, embrace the fickle nature of the high seas and do your best. Some people also complain that it's too long, that for a random game it maybe goes a little bit longer, and I think that's a more valid complaint. As a two-player game, Jen and I, we found it's a perfect length for us. We absolutely enjoy it, but I can see with more players maybe it goes on a bit too long. So this is maybe one that you're going to be better off with lower player counts. See, it's interesting, I started out talking about games at the top of my list that you need more players. This one you might want to have less players. With Jen and I, we absolutely adore it. And what actually is really exciting is its first expansion just came out recently. It's called Rattle Battle Grab the Loot Angry Oceans. And this might be very, very exciting for people who have complained that the game is too long, because it's basically it's just a bunch of new cards. It's a very, just a blister pack of new cards. And the nice thing is, one of the new modes it adds is one where the players start out with their ships already decked out with lots of power-ups, and it makes the game much shorter. And so for people who thought, wow, it's a neat game, but it's way too long, get that little expansion, and you might find that it's short enough for your play. This is another thing that I think Jen and I are going to be eyeballing to try to play on International Play Like a Pirate Day. Definitely a game of Rattle Battle Grab the Loot with the new Angry Ocean expansion. I cannot wait to try it. But that's it, folks. There's my top 10 pirate games. Now, there are other pirate games. Man, it's a shame the timing of this. There's 2 pirate games that are coming out later this year that I'm very, very excited about. Actually, one's coming out at Essen. It's called Admiral of the Black. It's another cooperative game where we all have one ship, and the pieces that represent us are little hourglasses. And in real time, we're trying to deal with all the problems our ship runs into, and we take these little hourglasses and we put them in the, we can put them, on the bow or at the stern to sail, or, up at the top of the mast to be a lookout, or, to man the cannons. But when we put our little guys down, it's an hourglass, so it starts counting down. That represents how long it takes us to do the action. And so we're actually having to manage time. This looks like a really awesome game. I can't wait to check it out. I wouldn't be surprised if it makes my top 10. And the other one I'm really excited about is called the Pirate Republic. It's going on to Kickstarter later this year. And this, like Francis Drake, is, most of these games I talked about are, kind of light, family weight, fun games. Pirate Republic is a big, sprawling, heavy piracy, Pirates of the Caribbean simulation, not the movie with all a bunch of fancy stuff. This is like a realistic simulation that spends a lot of time and a lot of detail on trying to be historically accurate. But the interesting thing is, it's not a in-your-face, destroy-each-other game. It's a game where we're all part of the same pirate gang, racing to complete objectives and work together. Although the game does have modes for semi-co-op and like trader stuff like that. But I think I'm really excited about it because I'm looking forward to it as a cooperative game. I kind of haven't played it yet, but it looks to me almost kind of like it is the piracy version of an Eldritch Horror or something like that. Again, no fantasy elements, but still a big, gigantic board, lots of stuff going on, and fully cooperative. So that one I'm looking forward to later in the year. Near maybe like November time frame, I think, is when it goes on Kickstarter. But anyway, that was it, folks. Those were my top 10, plus a couple little extras for pirate games that you might want to check out. And thanks for watching. Once again, hope to see everybody on International Play Like a Pirate Day. You can find out more about it in the links down below. There's a Facebook group devoted to it. But otherwise, hope you have a very, very nice day, everybody. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.